and welcome to another edition of Here We Are. I'm your host, T.R. Mugabe. Thank you for tuning in. Now, over the last 15 years, there has been discussion, debate, and politicking over the issue of a third airport in Chicago's Southland region. Now, within that 15 years, the visibility and popularity of the third airport issue has had an ebb and flow effect. The truth is, every couple of years, there is an attempt to revitalize the subject only for the effort to die down. The revitalization of the third airport issue is back and is stronger than ever. The renewed interest in an airport in that part, or in that region, is owed to a coalition called Keep Chicago and Illinois Flying. This group, comprised of business people, politicians, and community leaders from that region, is gaining momentum in what some call the best effort for a third airport presented so far. Now, just as there are strong arguments and proponents for a third airport, there are equally strong issues regarding whether or not the airport will overall benefit the people of that area or just a select few. Now, these people raise valid issues that need to be addressed if, in fact, a third airport is to be built in that region. Now, today we're going to talk to someone who is involved in the third airport issue, and his name is Bob McCary, and he is from the Keep Chicago and Illinois Flying Group. Thank you very much for coming to the program, Bob. We are so happy to have you here.
Very happy to be here.
Before we get into the meat of our discussion, let's discuss the area in the Southland region that they're talking about building the airport in.
The airport will be located 15 miles from the city of Chicago border. And we're looking at a site that is approximately about 1 or 2 miles north of Peatone, Illinois. And within the range of about 45 minutes traveling time from that site, you've got 2.5 million people living. So if you're familiar with, as you certainly are and your listeners are, with the city of Chicago and where this is, this would, if you look at a map of the city of Chicago as it sits in Illinois, you'd be looking at something somewhat south and west of the city center.
Now, is this the only proposed site for?
This is the best of all the sites that have been studied. This project began in a serious way approximately 14 years ago when the FAA asked the state of Illinois to look into the future. The FAA had decided preliminarily, looking at the future of aviation, that there would be a need for a third airport in the Chicago region. So they asked the state of Illinois to conduct a study. Several sites were discussed and looked at over that period of time. Most people remember the Lake Calumet site, which went down in flames, so to speak, as soon as the... well, the main problem that you had is that you had a situation in which if you were going to utilize that as an airport, Midway would have had to have been closed because the FAA determined that the flight patterns between the two airports would be too close. So you could not efficiently or safely run two airports that close together. So Midway had to be closed, and no one wants to see Midway closed. I mean, certainly, as you talk about the Keep Chicago, Illinois Flying Coalition, the people that put this together are basically the Chicago Southland Chamber of Commerce and their members, and they have been very, very strong in their support of Midway Airport throughout this history. So when it was determined that what was going to happen is Midway was going to have to be closed, the Lake Calumet site ended very quickly. Other sites were looked at, but this site here is the safest and most environmentally friendly and smartest spot that you could possibly put another airport in the Chicago region. There is no, if you look, again, if you want to look at the population and where homes are and what would have to be displaced, there is no better place than this.
Oh, and that was another issue as to why the Lake Calumet airport site was went down in flames, as you say, because of this placement issue. But let's talk for a moment about, you had said with the Lake Calumet issue, the reason why it went down in flames is because it would have been in direct competition to Midway. With regards to Midway and O'Hare Airport, I mean, with the third airport, that would still be competition. And there are people who have strong issues about a third airport being built, saying that it would really take a lot of business away from those two airports. How do you answer those those people?
Well, it is not true. I mean, the basic fact is that both Midway and O'Hare are at or near capacity. As an example, O'Hare Airport is one of only 4 airports in the country that is under a slot control by the FAA. that means that there can be no more additional landings or takeoff between peak hours, and that is 14 hours a day, in which it would be impossible to add any more flights whatsoever at O'Hare. So as far as flights are concerned, O'Hare is at a peak. There is no more ability to add additional airplanes coming in and out of that airport. Midway is undergoing an expansion, which has just been approved and proposed and approved. That will slightly expand the capacity of Midway, but there is no way that either of those airports or them in a combination can take care of what the future holds in the way of air travel into this region. So it won't be taking away from. It'll be absorbing what those two airports cannot handle in the future.
Oh, okay.
And you have to, what you have, and the kind of capacity we're looking at, again, these 2.5 million people that I talked about before took last year 3.1 million air trips. That's a tremendous market that now has to utilize either Midway or mainly O'Hare. And for those of us who live out south, and I'm a South Side Chicago person all my life. I live now in the south suburbs in South Holland. And I don't like that 1 hour ride, and if that's when I'm lucky, sometimes it's an hour and a half ride to O'Hare Airport, and I use the airport quite a bit. I'd much rather, and most of the people in our area would much rather be able to take that 20-minute ride out to Peatone.
Now, the issue, as I mentioned in my opening, has been discussed for around 15 years. Why do you believe that after 15 years, you're still just in the discussion phase?
Well, airports or any major public works project like this, in this day and age, are very difficult to get off the ground. Traditionally, the airlines themselves do not support them. It's been 59 years in this country since the airlines have supported the building of a new airport anywhere in the country. The examples of United and American right now, who are the two main opponents to this airport, who argue that it is not needed. Well, United and American, if you are someone who flies out of the Chicago area, you pay anywhere from 24 to 28%. These are two different studies, one done by the General Accounting Office in Washington, D.C., and the other one done by the FAA, which indicate that you pay anywhere from 24% to 28% more in airfares. That in 1993, as an example, people who flew out of O'Hare paid $280 million more in airfares because of the lack of competition. United and American control that airport. They have 80% of the slots and they have 89% of the passengers. If I'm United and O'Hare, do I want another airport to open up who can compete with me? Because, again, as I talked before about the slots, if an airline comes into the Chicago area or would like to come into the Chicago area, Pan Am recently wanted to fly out of O'Hare to service Florida. They couldn't get any slots at O'Hare. They had to go to Midway. Now, soon, airlines will not be able to go to Midway either for additional slots. So if you're United and American, if no one can come in to compete with you because you control all the slots, why would you want to build another airport or allow another airport to be built so another airline can come in and offer cheaper fares to destinations that you serve? So the airlines are very much against this. They are powerful. And when you look at the financing of major public works projects like this, the public says, we want to make sure our dollars are spent well, so you need studies. And then you have environmental concern, you need more studies. We all know Springfield and its political arena. That takes a while. So things take a while to get accomplished, and we still have time. I think that's what's important for people to note. It will take 4 years to 5 years to build this airport. If we start immediately, we'll have it built in time to take over the capacity that's going to be built up at that time.
Okay, now forgive me if I'm speaking in error. You were talking about the two different airlines that, well, I guess if you would want to have a monopoly on the airfare. Is it possible that if a third airport was built, that they could have flights coming out of there?
Sure.
Okay, so it's like they don't want to come out of a third airport?
Well, what they say publicly, and they have a duty, and their duty is to protect their shareholders. If American and United looks to the future and they determine what they need to do to maximize profits, to protect their shareholders, they say, well, we don't have to. I mean, what they don't want to have to do is build another facility, because it'll cost them money to participate in the third airport. So they don't want to outlay that money. However, once it is built, they will come there, because there are, again, 3.1 million trips taken by people who live within 45 minutes of that airport. That's a market that they are not going to ignore. If you look at other major airports around the country, Washington, D.C. In Washington, you have Dulles, you have BWI, Baltimore Washington International, and you have National. United, American, Delta serve all three airports. Same thing is true in Los Angeles, same thing is true in the New York area where there are 6 airports, same thing is true in the Dallas area. When the airports are finally built, even though they may oppose them, if you look at the history of aviation here in Chicago, the airlines opposed the building of O'Hare, they opposed the expansion of O'Hare, they opposed the building of the international terminal at O'Hare. And then eventually they came around. Okay, let's build it. But originally when it was proposed, they said it was not necessary. But at a point in time, and I believe that's going to be true of this situation here, they're going to look again at the needs to service their shareholders and to protect their profits. They're going to say, we're foolish not to get out there and service those people that live where I live.
Right, right. Hold that thought. We're going to be right back after this to talk with Bob McCarry about the 3rd airport. Stay tuned. Welcome back. This is Here We Are, and I am T.R. Mugabe. And today we're talking about the issue of a 3rd airport in Chicago's Southland region. And we're talking about this with Bob McCarry, who is a member of the Keep Chicago in Illinois flying group. There are a lot of ways to revitalize a community. Why an airport?
Well, there is no public works project or economic development project that you can name that would provide more jobs than an airport. This airport will provide, by the year 2020, almost 300,000 jobs. That's jobs directly related to the airport and the kind of multiplier effect you get out throughout the community with a substantial investment such as that. And they're also, they're high-paying jobs. They're skilled jobs. An airport brings the kind of traffic and transportation situations to an area that causes the creation of high-tech industries because of the easy access to the world that an airport provides. When you look at the O'Hare area and you know that 50 years ago somebody made a decision, some group of individuals made a decision that Orchard Field, which is what O'Hare was at that time, was going to become a major international airport. You look at the communities surrounding that airport today, you know that that decision was a correct one for those communities, and they benefit from it tremendously even to this day. I'd like to be able to, 50 years down the line, look at the surrounding area where the South Suburban Airport would be and see the same kind of growth, but also see revitalization of areas that are from the south side of the city of Chicago to the South Suburban area that need the kind of jobs that would be created, the kind of tax base that would be created, to fund schools, to do the kind of things that you need to do in the area of crime control. Communities and villages out there are concerned about tax bases. We need to help them as a state, as governments. Too often these decisions are made, I view anyway in the Chicago area, the kind of decisions that have been made tend to benefit communities north, west, south. I mean north and west, not south. And this is a project that can benefit people who live south and southwest.
And I will say that that you look at the south side and the south suburbs, it does not look like the north side or the western suburbs over there where the...
Well, there's a lot of people in this city who think that there is no south side of the city of Chicago, that everything, as far as the city is concerned, kind of stops somewhere around Madison or somewhere around McCormick Place or somewhere around Roosevelt Road or somewhere around Sox Park. It all depends on your orientation. But we need to understand the kind of economic fairness and justice and stability that a government planning operation ought to concern itself with. And I think the state of Illinois has been very good about that in looking at the study and determining the kind of economic advantages that can accrue to a neighborhood and to cities and villages and surrounding communities that are out in the Southwest. And even if that were not true, what is true is this is the safest, the smartest, and the most environmentally friendly area that the airport could be built anyway. This is where it needs to be built because there is no other place to build it. People talk about sites in Gary, Indiana. Well, why would we want to give the tremendous tax revenues that are generated by an airport to Indiana, to Gary? We should concern ourselves with the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, and those suburban communities that are south and southwest.
Now, is it true, I had another question, but I'm going to ask this right away. Is it true that a third airport will be built?
I think Kirk Brown, the Secretary of Transportation from the state of Illinois, when asked that question, says he is 100% convinced that an airport will be built. Next question is when. That's something that no one can answer at this point in time. We really hope that the building will start.
Now,
very
you
soon.
talked about economic growth, jobs, the possible 300,000 jobs that this airport will generate. Issues that were raised with regards to the building of the O'Hare Airport in Midway, with regards to African Americans being involved in it. You're talking about high-paying jobs, you're talking about contracts, you name it, the whole gamut. Given that this airport will possibly be built in a region where a good portion of the people that live there are African Americans, how are they going to be involved in this project?
Well,
how are they going to benefit?
Well, in a direct way, I certainly hope that they will be involved in the planning from the beginning. I mean, you have a very important element in Springfield, the Black Caucus, who ought to be very concerned about this particular opportunity for their communities. We would hope that they would get involved with the governor, with Governor Edgar, with their Democratic counterparts to start planning what will happen when the jobs that are created are actually let go. In projects of this size, work agreements are created from the beginning, which take into consideration how the jobs, in a sense, will be distributed. One of the best jobs that's ever been done on that is the Democratic Convention, which was just held here in the city of Chicago this summer, of course, in which there was a very good job of making sure that all communities participated in that particular situation. And I would hope that it will continue, that kind of cooperation will continue as far as the construction of the actual airport itself is concerned. But then the jobs that are created around the airport that are not really directly related to the airport, which is a good portion of those 300,000 jobs, those jobs are going to naturally be filled by the people who live in those communities as long as they have the skills to fill them. And the kind of educational environment that will be created by the tax revenues that are brought into the situation by the airport will allow the educational system to improve, thereby educating those people who need to be educated to a certain level to assume the kind of jobs that a high-tech society is now demanding. I mean, we're no longer, you don't build an airport with a pick and an axe. I mean, you build it with sophisticated machinery. And the skills needed to operate those sophisticated machinery are the skills that you need to learn in schools, and the schools need the tools and the dollars in order to teach that. So it's a never-ending circle, but it will eventually come down to benefit the community. When it benefits the community, it benefits the people who live in the community.
Because that is a main issue of the people who are not necessarily opposed to the airport, but just concerned that these issues that this issue be addressed.
Well, my only answer to them is that then they should really, let's come to the table, let's get involved and keep Chicago, Illinois flying. We intend to try and address some of those issues. We are meeting very soon with the legislators in Springfield. We hope to talk to them about their involvement in this project, and from that will come the kind of cooperation that needs to happen. I mean, one of the exciting prospects in this proposal, and you talked earlier about there have been several efforts to revitalize and rejuvenate the building of the airport. And one of the exciting things that's happened in this particular effort is the bipartisan support that Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. And Congressman Jerry Weller have supplied to this particular project. They're working, you have a Democrat, you have a Republican, You have two people that maybe disagree on many other issues, but they agree very strongly that this airport is extremely important. In that kind of participation, particularly in the concerns that you have expressed about how the jobs are going to be allocated or what the economic situation will be, will it benefit everyone? I think having Congressman Jackson involved in this situation would be very helpful also on the federal level.
Because that was a major piece that he ran on with his congressional run, his first congressional run.
Right.
Now, what you talked about some of the people that are involved in this, and there is a bipartisan effort. Let's talk about some other people that you hadn't mentioned. Governor Egger, I mean, well, he hasn't had a press conference on it. There's definitely talk that he supports this airport issue.
The governor considers this the #1 economic development project for the state of Illinois for this year, and the state is working very hard. A lot of what needs to be done right now needs to be done as background. You have to lay the foundation before you actually build the house. And the foundation for this is going through the environmental process, making sure there are no environmental concerns. They're a certain way down the line in that particular study, and so far everything looks very, very good. You have to also determine how the airport is going to be financed.
That was my next
question. And the state is engaging. They've already issued the report on how there are 4 basic financing plans that they could be utilized. 2 of them involve smaller phased-in situations where you start with maybe 1 or 2 runways and you build to the eventual number of runways that they will have, and 2 which are immediate full-blown plans. When the airport opens, it will be fully grown. 2 of those plans also involve some private financing, which is a very unique approach to funding airports in the United States. There are no partially or fully privately financed airports, passenger airports in the United States. There are some cargo airports. And the state intends on fully working with investors throughout this year to come up with a plan to determine how it will be built, and the investment process. That's an important thing that needs to be done, that is not a very public kind of thing. It's not something that you would see on TV or listen to on the radio or read in your newspapers, because it is meeting with people in the background information. I think the state is going forward with that very, very well, and they'll have some exciting news in the near future.
Mm-hmm. Now, how much, or can you tell us about how much a project like this will cost?
Well, you're looking at a minimum initial opening the runway of somewhere around $300 million. One plan ranging to around $2 billion for the full-blown plan. So it all depends on which plan the state is able to select and which one is most economically feasible at the time that the actual building happens. So it's a very significant investment.
Now, when approved, or if approved, how long will it take to, in the short range, as you were saying, maybe 1 or 2 runways to be built, would it take for the airport to be built, and as well as the full-blown one? How many years are we talking?
Well, you'd be looking at 4 to 5 years to actually build the airport, to get it, from the moment in time that the airport is approved, you're looking at around 4 years.
Okay. Now, I remember when, as we talked before, when it was a Lake Calumet issue, and that some of the problems that were surrounding that was the noise pollution, with regard, as well as the displacement of people, and they don't seem to be big problems that you're dealing with now. What are, if you will, other concerns, or any other concerns from the people in that area with regards to the 3rd airport?
Well, I mean, people are naturally concerned about what their life is going to be like. You have many people who live out in an area right now who, in a sense, their economic, even their social lives are on hold because they don't know whether or not there will be an airport built. If they know for sure an airport is going to be built, there's certain things they would do with the land that they have. There are farmers out there that are trying to figure out what they should do with their property. But the kind of concerns that you typically have with a project of this nature involve noise pollution. As an example, and one of the things about this airport is, as defined by the FAA, the kind of noise that is associated with an airport, all of that noise will be contained within the footprint of the airport. That means the airport grounds are large enough to include all landing and takeoff noise. Now, I live in a home in South Holland, which is 30 miles from the airport. Occasionally I hear an airplane going over. You still will hear some noise like that, no matter where you would live. But the kind of noise that is associated with takeoffs and landings of airplanes using that airport there, all the noise will be contained within the footprint of the airport. So people will not have that problem that O'Hare's neighbors have, because O'Hare was built without the kind of technology and forethought that is going into this particular project. And also probably at that point in time not the same availability of land that is available out in this area. So that's a major concern that is not going to be a problem. The other thing you worry about is the kind of ground pollution that an airport could cause. You have fuel spillages, oil spillage, the de-icing process that goes on with airlines. This project is been engineered in such a way that all of the water that is created, all of the oil, everything that is created within the boundary of the airport will be collected within that boundary, filtered, recycled, and put out into the environment cleaner than when it came out of the air as rain. So those things, again, are being considered. But you are going to have approximately, I believe, 1,800 people in the latest study who will be displaced from that. But that compares to, I think it was about 80,000 people who were going to be displaced when you were going to build it in Lake Calumet.
We're going to pick this up right after the commercial. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We are talking today to Bob McCarry, who is a part of the coalition Keep Chicago and Illinois Flying, and they are the key component to the revitalization of the third airport issue, which will be at this point at the proposed Peatone site. Bob, let's talk a bit about the coalition. I didn't address it at the top of the hour, but how it started.
Yes, basically this new renewed effort has been spearheaded by the Chicago Southland Chamber of Commerce. That is, they have members from the south side of the city of Chicago, throughout Indiana, through the collar suburban counties in the south and southwest of Chicago. And they're the second largest Chamber of Commerce in the state of Illinois with almost 2,000 members. So it's a very strong, very active chamber. And under the leadership of their chairman, Mike Seward, who has been very interested in this project as an economic development project. They've gotten together with several others who have been fighting long and hard for this project for many years. The Third Airport Alliance, headed by Don Goff, the Third Airport Clearinghouse, headed by Ed Pazel, the South Suburban Mayors and Managers Association, headed by Beth Rule, the Will County Chamber of Commerce, headed by Bob Herrick. That's basically, along with Bob Skurler from the Chicago Southland Development Corporation, are the basic foundation of the steering committee that decided what they needed to do is to try and get this done. And they put together funds that were raised in that situation from membership and from interested people throughout that region. And they funded Keep Chicago and Illinois Flying. And if any people are listening or watching to this, watching this program today, those who are out there, what they ought to do is consider getting involved, because this is a very important project. And as I indicated, getting involved on the ground level, having an ability to put your 2 cents into the project will in the long run get a lot more than 2 cents out of it. So
well, when you say put the 2 cents in, someone that just lives in the area, a regular middle-aged worker comes and say, you know, well, I don't know exactly how I fit into this picture, but you know, what is it that I can do to help? I mean, is it on the lines of a campaign where you go in and volunteer your time?
It's not dissimilar to a political campaign, but the first thing they can do is give a call at 708-957-6950, which is the chamber headquarters, and ask to be contacted by someone representing Keep Chicago and Illinois Flying. And that's, once again, I'm going to repeat it, it's 708 957-6950. If you're interested out there, please give us a call, and we'd like to get you involved in this process.
Yeah, we'll mention that name or that number again later on in the program. But any other with regards to the background on the coalition?
Well, that's the essential background. Our objective is going to be to do the kind of work that, first of all, lets people know that this is not a dead issue. There are people out there, many people in the legislature, many people in the political and economic community in Chicago who would like to see this not happen. From their point of view, if they treat it as an issue that is not there, that's the best thing they can do. Our job is to make a little bit of noise, to make sure that people understand, wait a minute, this is not a dead issue. This is going to happen, and from our point of view, we want to see it happen very quickly. Faster it's done, the better off we are, because what we have to understand about Chicago, and we should think about Chicago's history, Chicago has grown on transportation. Chicago's great strength was the railroads. We were perfectly positioned. There were people who thought ahead at that point in time, and Chicago grew dramatically and is the tremendous metropolis and financial behemoth that it is because of the railroads originally. Excuse me. And then over a period of time, the railroads died, and what next happened to Chicago was the kind of transportation that's provided by air travel. What that brings to a community is conventions. It brings the location of businesses in the area. Business executives who have to travel want to locate their businesses where travel is easy. Your major form of travel today is airlines. When a business locates itself in an area, either a headquarters or a major manufacturing concern, that brings in additional business, and it feeds on itself. When you get to a situation which will come in the not too distant future, where the ability to fly in and out of Chicago is not as easy as it is today, and many of us who fly in and out don't necessarily consider it to be easy today. I mean, there are times of the year when you don't want to go near O'Hare Airport because of the crowding. Well, if we don't do something about building a third airport, we're going to have as many as twice as many people flying out of O'Hare and Midway by the year 2005 than fly out today. Now, just think about that, those of us who use those two airports. Where are they going to go? I mean, where are you going to put these additional people? It's very difficult to figure that out. There are ways it can be done, but it is not going to be ways in which it is going to benefit the passenger. It's going to benefit the airlines, but it is not going to benefit the passenger. It's going to be more difficult to get there. You're going to have to park further away. Traffic is going to be tremendous on the ground. It's going to be tremendous in the air. You're relying upon a new era of jumbo jets that are not yet built and are increasingly being looked at as airplanes that will not be built. So this only solution is to build a third airport. If we don't build a third airport, when we reach this congestion situation, people are going to say, you know what, it's too difficult to fly in and out of Chicago. Why don't we locate our company in Indianapolis? Why don't we put it in Kansas City? Let's put it in St. Louis. Let's put it in Minneapolis. So all of a sudden you're going to have, as you recently had, the radiologists, which is the largest convention that comes into Chicago, have decided not to have their convention here every year. They're only going to have it here every other year, excuse me. In the future, they may possibly not even have it here every other year. Because of the cost of transportation. Part of it ground transportation, and part of it the transportation to fly in and out of here, and the congestion that is created by that transportation. So that's just today, and if we're looking at the kind of increase in air travel in the future, you're going to see that happen more and more and more, and we don't want to see that happen. We need to keep Chicago economically viable for ourselves and our children and those who are going to follow us.
I think it would be important right now to re-mention the fact that anyone that wants to get involved with the coalition, Keep Chicago, Illinois Flying, can, whether you are a politician, a community leader, or not, they can get involved. And could you give us the number again that they can call? Sure.
The number is 708-957-6950. And you understand, there is no, we're not going to hit you up for money. We're not going to hit you up for anything other than ask you maybe in some ways to participate by writing a letter, by attending a meeting, by participating in a grassroots effort to let people who make these decisions know that those of you out there who care about what's going on have a certain point of view. And that point of view is a point of view that ought to be listened to by those people who are going to be making this decision. And the people that are going to be making the decision are basically the state legislators at this point in time.
Now, let's go back, because we were talking about transportation and how the reason why Chicago is the way it is because it was built on the transportation effort. With regards to getting back and forth to airline, because everyone does not drive, whether you don't have a car or you don't know how to drive. Everyone doesn't drive to the airport. With O'Hare and Midway, you have CTA routes, you have metro routes. When put in place, how soon before the transportation infrastructure, meaning the CTA or the Metro, the RTA, or buses come along, because we don't have that in place now?
Well, but you do have it in place almost to the very door of the airport, the proposed airport site. There's a Metro line not far from there that just needs to be extended, which will be done certainly before the airport opens. That's one of the key plans.
So you're saying these things happen before?
These things will happen before the airport opens. You also have the proposed high-speed rail link between St. Louis and Chicago, which will go right by the site of this airport, thereby linking both Chicago and St. Louis directly to the airport on a high-speed rail. And you also have I-57, I-80, and 355 or I-55, which will be extended eventually out to the airport site. All of these things will happen before the airport actually opens. That is in the plans for the airport, and that will be done. This is going to be, transportation in this airport will be absolutely the best in not only this state, but in any state, probably for any airport that there is. Again, because you have an opportunity to plan for the future rather than after the airport is built trying to figure out how people are going to get to it. This has already been thought out before. This has been, you know, again, this has been discussed for 15 years now.
Okay, being that it's been discussed for 15 years, why did you get involved?
Why did I?
This? Yes. Well,
why did I get involved now? Well, I've been interested in this project for a long time. First of all, I mean, this is, you know, I'm a professional public relations and public affairs person, but I live in the area. I've thought for a long time that the kind of economic development projects represented by an airport, again, are too often located elsewhere when political decisions are made within this state and within the city. I, as a Southsider, sometimes feel very strongly that people up north don't have the same concerns about the area I live in that I tend to have about the area that they live in. I've always felt that if you were going to make the South Suburban area and the south side of the city of Chicago something that in the future will be an economic strength at a multiple degree from what it is today, and not that it is, I mean, first of all, these areas are doing very well today to a certain extent. I mean, you have tremendous expansion happening out in the South Suburban areas. In particular, you have Monee Mall, which is being, you know, which is going to be a tremendous source of jobs and economic development out in that area, which is the same people that are doing the Gurney Mills Mall are going to build Monee Mills Mall out in that area, which is right next to the airport land. But you can't continue to piecemeal economic development. You need something like an airport to be the linchpin of the future. And I've felt that personally for a very long time. When the original Lake Calumet site was proposed, I was someone who was in favor of it from a personal point of view, even though the airplanes were going to go right over my home, and I mean directly over where I live. And close enough that it would have been probably something that I would have heard, but it still was something that I felt was important and it ought to be done. And I believe very strongly from a personal point of view about this project. But I was, you know, when I talked before about the Chicago Southland revitalizing this issue, they approached me and asked me whether or not I would get involved in it, and I've been involved with it now for 4 months.
Well, once again, as you stated, there was a personal decision that anyone could get involved in this. What, outside of some of the things that we talked about, are other things getting in the way of putting this together, this actually happening?
Well, the main concern that you have right now is the FAA at this point in time has required what they call regional consensus to see this airport built. Regional consensus in our region requires participation and a go-ahead from the city of Chicago. At this point in time, the city of Chicago has been opposing the development of this airport, even though they were originally in favor of the development of the Lake Calumet site. and thereby obviously understood the need for another airport. Otherwise, they would not have been in favor of the Lake Calumet site. It changed when that site was not going to be located within the borders of the city of Chicago. So I think we need the city to open up a little bit and think more progressively and think about the surrounding communities, not just its own selfish interest to a certain extent. But if that is going to happen, what we need to do is to show them that there is not going to be a diminution of the strength of O'Hare and Midway. Justifiably, the city's selfish concerns, and I don't mean selfish in a bad way, because many times, in fact, our government is based on selfishness. We go out and we vote. We vote for our own self-interest usually, or maybe we should. That's the way democracy works best. And the city is concerned for its own self-interest because these are enormous tax dollars that both O'Hare and Midway generate. Enormous, again, economic strength that they don't want to see anything negative happen to those two airports. I think they can be made to understand that it will not, and also they can be made to understand that this is not a power grab by the state of Illinois, by Governor Edgar, by any particular faction to try and get their hooks into O'Hare or Midway. That is not the intention. O'Hare and Midway will still be operated by the city of Chicago as they are now. And the Peatone site will be operated by a separate airport authority that will be composed of who knows at this point in time, but that airport authority will not have authority over Midway and O'Hare. So if we can bring the city to the table, that would be the most important thing we can accomplish. That's a major roadblock at this point in time. The second major roadblock would be how is it going to be financed. And that is easier. Once the city of Chicago comes to the table, probably the airlines come to the table on the same day. And when those two entities come to the table, the financing problem kind of goes away.
Mm-hmm. Now, we kind of talked about it before, that one of the concerns are the involvement of a great portion of the people that live in that area, which are African American, in the grassroots part of the planning now. I know you have a Jesse Jackson Jr. that is there. What other people do you have working there that is going to work that community for you, that is going to help you get your foot into the community?
Well, I mean, I think what we need to do there is we have to rely upon the percolate up theory as opposed to the settling down theory. I would prefer to see community people, activists, understand the economic argument, the type of jobs that would be created, and have them energize their legislators and those people who represent them as to the importance of this issue, and then to get those legislators involved and bring them into the situation. It's not my job, nor do I want the job, to be the one who's going to broker the deal or put people together. I think that will happen automatically once we get the kind of support that we're hoping to get from the community on this issue. That's up to the elected representatives, to the governor, to the mayor, to Bill Clinton, to the new head of the FAA, to the new head of the Department of Transportation in Washington, D.C. All of those people need to participate in the process of getting that going.
Okay. We'll be right back after this message. Stay tuned. We are talking to Bob McCary of Keep Chicago and Illinois Flying. Bob, you wanted to make a comment on a question that I had asked with regards to input, community input.
Yeah, to expand upon the kind of program that we are running, and this varies in different ways. We're doing many of the traditional kind of outreach kind of things that you do, but a very important outreach tool within the community that you would be most concerned about, and when you talk about jobs out there for African Americans and the kind of economic concerns that they would have, is in one of the approaches we are trying to make is through the community organizations and through the churches in those particular communities, realizing the tremendous input and tremendous respect that is held by the community for those organizations. So, and that is an effort that is being spearheaded basically by Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr., who is offered to try and get everyone together in some type of a meeting in which we will then discuss the various methods in which we would ask them to participate. But that's a very important element in what is going on. And again, I would ask those of you who are out there to think about, and we're going to repeat the number a little bit here again to make sure that you do get it down. But it is Keep Chicago, Illinois Flying, and it is 708-957-6950. And I want to thank you very much for having me here. It's been wonderful. It's an opportunity that we need to let people know what we're doing, and these kind of shows that deal with issues, and not from a sensational point of view, but more from a point of view of educating people and letting them know what the concerns are out there are very important, and I appreciate your efforts.
Well, we want to thank you for coming out. It's definitely been very informative, and I would encourage those people that live in that area, and I being one of them, to get involved in it, because only are we able to get our piece of the pie, everyone's to get something out of it if they put something into it. So I want to thank you for coming and giving us all this information.
And before I leave here, I'm going to have you fill out a volunteer card.
Volunteer card. No problem, no problem. I'm always willing to do my part. I want to thank you as well for tuning in. Thank you for supporting us on behalf of me, T.R. Mugabe, and everyone here at Here We Are. We say thank you for tuning in, and until next time, God bless.